This book begins with a quiet truth. Not every voice around you deserves control over your life. Some voices are loving, but afraid. Some voices are confident, but wrong. Some voices sound wise, but only repeat the fears of the crowd. And if you do not learn the difference between listening and following, you may spend your life walking a path that was never truly yours. We are taught to listen from a young age. Listen to family, listen to teachers, listen to friends, listen to society. Listening can help you grow, avoid mistakes, and understand life more deeply. But listening becomes dangerous when it turns into blind obedience. One opinion changes your dream. One criticism weakens your confidence. One person's fear becomes your decision. Slowly, you stop hearing your own voice. This book is for the person who wants to respect others without being controlled by them. It is for the person who wants to learn from everyone but copy no one. Because people can advise you, but they cannot become you. They can warn you, but they cannot live your life for you. So listen carefully, learn deeply, think clearly, and remember, listen to everyone, but follow no one blindly. Chapter 1. The crowd is loud because it is afraid of silence. The crowd is one of the most powerful forces in human life, not because it is always right, but because it makes wrong choices feel safe when many people are making them together. A person can doubt his own dream, ignore his own heart, and silence his own intelligence simply because he looks around and sees everyone else walking in a different direction. The crowd gives people comfort because it removes the pressure of personal responsibility. When you follow what everyone else is doing, you do not have to explain yourself too much. You do not have to defend your decisions. You do not have to face the loneliness of being different. You can hide inside the group and tell yourself, "At least I am not alone." But a life built only on not being alone can become a life where you are never truly yourself. The crowd is loud because silence forces people to think. Silence asks difficult questions. Silence asks, "Is this truly what I want? Or am I only doing it because everyone else is doing it?" Silence asks, "Did I choose this path with courage, or did I accept it because I feared judgment?" Silence asks, "Am I living from my own understanding, or am I borrowing the opinions of people who never stopped long enough to understand themselves?" Many people avoid silence because silence reveals the truth they have been running from. It shows them that their life is full of copied desires, inherited fears, and decisions made to please people who are not even satisfied with their own lives. This is why thinking for yourself often begins in quietness, not in argument, not in rebellion, not in proving people wrong. It begins when you step away from the noise long enough to hear your own mind clearly. The world will always have opinions about what you should become, what you should choose, how you should live, who you should impress, what you should fear, and which dreams are realistic. But if you never create a quiet space inside yourself, every loud voice will sound like truth, and every confident person will seem like a guide. You must understand that confidence is not the same as wisdom. Some people speak strongly because they know deeply, but many people speak strongly because they fear being questioned. They repeat what they were told. They defend what they never examined. They call something impossible because it was impossible for them. They call your dream unrealistic because they never had the courage to follow their own. They may not be evil. They may not be trying to destroy you. But their limitations can become your prison if you accept their voice as your direction. The crowd often rewards sameness. It praises the person who fits in, who does not disturb the pattern, who chooses the expected path, who laughs at the accepted jokes, who follows the accepted timeline, who wants what everyone else wants, and who fears what everyone else fears. But your soul was not created to become a copy of public opinion. Your mind was not given to you so it could sleep while others decide everything. Your life is not a rented room inside someone else's expectations. It is your one chance to discover what is true for you, what is meaningful to you, and what kind of person you are willing to become when nobody is clapping yet. There will be moments when the crowd tells you to hurry, but your wisdom tells you to wait. There will be moments when the crowd tells you to stay, but your peace tells you to leave. There will be moments when the crowd tells you to chase more, prove more, explain more, and compete more. But something inside you whispers that your life is not meant to be measured by noise. These moments are tests of self-trust. They reveal whether you are guided by inner clarity or outer pressure. To listen to the crowd is not always wrong. Sometimes the crowd carries useful warnings. Sometimes people around you can see what you cannot see. Sometimes advice from others protects you from avoidable pain, but listening must remain listening. It must not become surrender. You can hear people without handing them ownership of your choices. You can learn from the crowd without becoming trapped inside it. You can respect opinions without worshipping them. The person who thinks for himself does not reject every voice. He simply refuses to let every voice become his master. He listens, observes, reflects, and then returns to the quiet place inside himself where real decisions are made. That quiet place is where your values live. It is where your purpose speaks. It is where your deepest truth waits patiently beneath the noise of other people's expectations. If you want to live a life that is truly yours, you must become comfortable with the silence that the crowd fears. You must become willing to stand still while everyone else rushes. You must become willing to ask questions that others avoid. You must become willing to be misunderstood for a season rather than spend your whole life understood by people who never knew the real you. The crowd may be loud, but loudness is not leadership. The crowd may be many, but numbers are not truth. The crowd may feel safe, but safety without authenticity becomes a quiet form of suffering. So listen to the world, but do not disappear inside it. Hear the voices around you, but do not lose the voice within you. Let the crowd teach you what it can, but never let it decide who you are. Because the day you stop fearing silence is the day you begin thinking for yourself. Chapter 2. Advice is information, not instruction. Advice can be one of the greatest gifts in life, but it can also become one of the most dangerous traps when you forget that advice is meant to inform your decision, not replace your decision. Every person you meet carries a world inside them. They carry memories, wounds, fears, victories, disappointments, lessons, regrets, and beliefs shaped by the road they have walked. When they advise you, they are not only speaking from wisdom, they are also speaking from their own history. They are speaking from what worked for them, what hurt them, what frightened them, what saved them, and sometimes what they never fully healed from. This is why advice must be respected, but it must also be examined, because not every sincere person is a suitable guide for your life. Many people make the mistake of believing that confident advice is automatically correct advice. Someone speaks with a strong voice, uses serious words, acts certain, and suddenly you feel small in front of their opinion. You begin to think they must know more than you. You begin to doubt what you felt clearly before they spoke. You begin to adjust your dreams, your choices, and your direction because another person sounded more sure of your life than you did. But confidence can create pressure without creating truth. A loud voice can shake you, but it cannot live the result of your choices. A strong opinion can influence you, but it cannot carry the weight of your regret if that opinion leads you away from your real path. This is why you must learn to receive advice like a thinker, not like a servant. A thinker listens with respect, but does not bow blindly. A thinker understands that advice is not an order, it is not a command, it is not a final verdict. It is a piece of information being offered from another person's perspective. Sometimes that information is valuable, sometimes it is incomplete, sometimes it is outdated, sometimes it is full of fear, sometimes it is full of love, but still limited. And sometimes it sounds wise only because it matches what society already repeats. There are people who will advise you to choose safety because they once took a risk and failed. There are people who will advise you not to trust anyone because someone betrayed them. There are people who will advise you to give up on a dream because they gave up on theirs and now need your surrender to make their surrender feel normal. There are people who will advise you to stay small because your growth silently reminds them of the courage they abandoned. They may not say this directly, they may not even understand it themselves. But human advice is often mixed with human pain, and if you do not know how to separate wisdom from fear, you may accidentally inherit a life that was built from someone else's wounds. You must also understand that people usually advise you from the level of their own vision. A person who has only seen a small life may call your bigger vision unrealistic. A person who has never built something difficult may call your ambition foolish. A person who has always lived for approval may tell you to avoid anything that invites criticism. A person who has never walked alone may warn you that solitude means failure. They are not always trying to harm you, they may simply be advising you from the only world they know. But your life cannot be limited to the size of someone else's imagination. Good advice does not crush your inner voice. Good advice sharpens it. Good advice may challenge you, but it does not make you feel powerless. It gives you something to consider, something to evaluate, something to compare against your values and your direction. Good advice helps you see more clearly. It does not demand that you stop seeing for yourself. When advice is truly wise, it does not need to control you. It can stand beside your judgment and invite reflection. It does not need to frighten you into obedience. Bad advice often arrives with pressure. It says, "You must do this." It says, "You will regret it if you do not listen to me." It says, "Everyone knows this is the right way." It says, "People like us do not do things like that." It says, "Be realistic," when what it really means is, "Do not make me uncomfortable with your courage." Bad advice may sound protective, but it often carries hidden fear. It may appear practical, but it may quietly kill your spirit. It may promise security, but it may steal your aliveness. This does not mean you should become stubborn. Stubbornness is not independent thinking. A stubborn person refuses advice because their ego cannot handle correction. An independent thinker listens because they are humble enough to learn, but they choose carefully because they are strong enough to decide. There is a great difference between refusing guidance and refusing control. The wise person does not close the door to others. He simply keeps the key to his own life in his own hand. When someone gives you advice, pause before accepting it. Do not reject it immediately, and do not obey it immediately. Let it sit in your mind. Ask yourself, where is this advice coming from? Is it coming from wisdom or fear? Is it coming from experience or bitterness? Is it coming from love or control? Is this person speaking because they understand my path or because they are uncomfortable with my difference? Does this advice fit the life I am trying to build? Or does it only fit the life they think I should live? You must also ask, has this person earned the right to influence this area of my life? This question is powerful because many people give advice in areas where they have never demonstrated wisdom. People with broken discipline may advise you about success. People who are controlled by fear may advise you about courage. People who never built peace may advise you about happiness. People who live for others' approval may advise you about freedom. People who quit on themselves may advise you to lower your dreams. You can love people without making them your compass. You can respect them without letting them lead you into a life they have never learned how to live. Sometimes the most dangerous advice comes from people close to you because their words carry emotional weight. When a stranger doubts you, it may hurt for a moment. But when family, friends, or people you love doubt you, their words can enter deeper. You may begin to confuse love with authority. You may think, because they care about me, they must know what is best for me. But love does not automatically create vision. A person can love you deeply and still misunderstand your calling. A person can want to protect you and still hold you back. A person can have good intentions and still give advice that comes from fear rather than truth. This is why emotional closeness must not become intellectual surrender. You can listen to loved ones with tenderness. You can thank them for caring. You can consider their concerns, but at the end of the day, you must return to yourself and ask whether their advice brings clarity or confusion, growth or shrinking, courage or fear, peace or pressure. Your life must be guided by more than the fear of disappointing people. If you choose only to keep others comfortable, you may one day become deeply uncomfortable inside your own soul. There is also another kind of advice that can be quietly dangerous. Advice from successful people. Many people assume that because someone succeeded, every instruction they give must be right. But success is not always transferable. What worked for one person in one season, with one personality, one opportunity, one environment, and one set of circumstances, may not work the same way for you. You can study successful people, but you must not become a blind copy of them. Their success can inspire you, but your path still needs your own intelligence. The goal is not to duplicate their life. The goal is to extract wisdom and apply it in a way that fits your own nature, values, timing, and purpose. A mature mind learns from everyone, but kneels to no one's opinion. It listens to the old because age may carry experience. It listens to the young because freshness may carry truth. It listens to the successful because results can reveal principles. It listens to the broken because pain can reveal warnings. It listens to critics because sometimes criticism exposes blind spots. It listens to supporters because encouragement gives strength. But after listening, the mature mind does not throw itself into the hands of every voice. It gathers what is useful, releases what is harmful, and decides with responsibility. This is where many people fail. They want advice to remove the burden of decision. They want someone else to tell them what to do, so that if things go wrong, they can say, "It was not my fault. I only followed what I was told." But adulthood begins when you accept that even when you take advice, the decision is still yours. You are still responsible for what you choose. You are still responsible for what you ignore. You are still responsible for what you tolerate. You are still responsible for what you become. Advice can guide you, but it cannot rescue you from the responsibility of owning your life. The person who thinks for himself does not fear advice. He welcomes it because he knows he does not know everything. But he also knows that no one else knows everything about him. No one else carries his full story. No one else feels the exact weight of his dreams. No one else has lived inside his private battles, his quiet hopes, his deepest values, and his future consequences. So he listens with humility, but chooses with ownership. To make advice useful, you must develop an inner filter. Without this filter, every voice can enter you and rearrange your direction. Your filter is built from your values, your principles, your long-term vision, your self-awareness, and your willingness to be honest with yourself. When advice enters your life, pass it through that filter. If it strengthens your clarity, keep it. If it exposes a blind spot, learn from it. If it warns you of a real danger, respect it. If it is only fear disguised as wisdom, release it. If it is control disguised as concern, reject it. If it is bitterness disguised as experience, do not drink from it. One of the clearest signs that you are growing is that you no longer react to advice instantly. You do not become excited just because someone praises your idea, and you do not become destroyed just because someone doubts it. You stop treating other people's words like weather that controls your whole day. You become stable enough to listen without being shaken, wise enough to consider without being captured, and strong enough to decide without begging everyone to agree. This stability is rare, and because it is rare, people will notice it. Some may become uncomfortable when they can no longer influence you easily. They may say you are changing. They may say you no longer listen. They may say you think you know everything. But often what they mean is that you no longer obey without thinking. You no longer allow guilt to replace judgment. You no longer allow pressure to become guidance. You no longer treat every opinion as a commandment. Let them misunderstand your growth if they must. A person who is learning to think for himself will always look strange to people who are used to blind following. Your calm independence may offend those who depended on your confusion. Your boundaries may disturb those who benefited from your lack of clarity. Your self-trust may feel like disrespect to people who were comfortable when you doubted yourself. But you must remember the central truth of this chapter. Advice is information, not instruction. It is material for your mind, not a cage for your life. It is something to examine, not something to worship. It can be valuable, but it is not automatically final. It can be loving, but it is not always wise. It can be confident, but it is not always true. So listen when people speak. Listen with patience. Listen with humility. Listen with gratitude when the advice is sincere. But before you follow, return to yourself. Return to your values. Return to your purpose. Return to the quiet intelligence inside you that knows the difference between being guided and being controlled. Because the strongest people are not the ones who ignore everyone. They are the ones who can hear everyone clearly and still choose their own path with courage. Chapter 3. The price of following others is losing yourself slowly. Losing yourself rarely happens in one dramatic moment, and this is why so many people do not notice it until they have already spent years living as a stranger inside their own life. It usually begins quietly, with one small compromise that looks harmless from the outside. You say yes when your heart wanted to say no. You agree with an opinion you do not believe because you do not want to create tension. You hide a dream because someone may laugh. You choose the safer path because people around you call safety wisdom. You silence your own excitement because the people near you do not understand it. You begin adjusting your personality, your goals, your voice, and your direction just enough to keep everyone comfortable. And because each change feels small, you do not realize that over time you are slowly walking away from yourself. At first, following others may even feel peaceful because it removes the pressure of making your own decisions. When someone else tells you what to choose, you do not have to carry the full weight of uncertainty. When society gives you a ready-made path, you do not have to ask difficult questions. When the crowd approves of your direction, you do not have to explain yourself every day. There is comfort in being accepted. There is relief in not standing out. There is a temporary safety in becoming what people expect, because approval can feel like protection when you are afraid of rejection. But this kind of peace is not real peace. It is the quiet numbness of a person who has stopped listening to the truth inside them. The danger of blindly following others is that you can appear successful while feeling deeply disconnected. You may have the job people respect, the relationship people praise, the lifestyle people admire, the image people approve of, and still feel a heavy emptiness that you cannot explain. On the outside, everything may look correct. On the inside, something feels unfinished, untouched, and quietly betrayed. This is because the soul does not celebrate a life that was built only to impress others. The soul does not feel fulfilled by applause if the path being applauded was never truly chosen. You can receive approval from the world and still feel abandoned by yourself. Many people confuse this emptiness with laziness, sadness, or lack of gratitude, but often it is something much deeper. It is the pain of living too far away from your own truth. It is the ache of carrying dreams you never allowed yourself to follow. It is the exhaustion of performing a version of yourself that everyone accepts but you no longer recognize. It is the silent grief of realizing that your life has been shaped more by fear than by purpose. And because this grief is not always visible, people may tell you that you should be happy, that you should be thankful, that you have nothing to complain about. They may not understand that a life can look full and still feel empty when it is not truly yours. Every time you follow someone else blindly, you trade a piece of your inner freedom for outer approval. You may gain praise, but you lose clarity. You may avoid criticism, but you lose courage. You may keep people pleased, but you lose honesty with yourself. You may fit in, but you lose the strength that comes from standing in your own understanding. The price is not always obvious at first, but it collects slowly. It appears in the form of resentment, confusion, low energy, hidden anger, emotional tiredness, and a strange feeling that your life is moving forward while your true self is being left behind. This is why some people become irritated for no clear reason. They are not angry at one event. They are angry because they have spent years betraying themselves in small ways. They are angry because they kept saying yes to lives, roles, expectations, and responsibilities that did not match who they were becoming. They are angry because they gave people permission to design their future, and now they feel trapped inside a structure built from other people's opinions. The anger is not random. It is the part of them that still remembers they were meant to live with more truth. The world often teaches you to fear disappointing others, but it rarely teaches you to fear disappointing yourself. Yet the deepest regret often comes not from being misunderstood by people, but from becoming unknown to yourself. Imagine reaching a later season of your life and realizing that you made most of your choices because you wanted to be liked, accepted, praised, or protected from judgment. Imagine realizing that the dreams you buried were not impossible, only inconvenient to the people around you. Imagine discovering that the path you followed was never destiny, but only pressure that you obeyed for too long. Following others can also make you lose your decision-making strength. When you constantly ask everyone what to do, your mind becomes weak from lack of use. When you always wait for permission, your inner authority begins to shrink. When you change direction every time someone questions you, you train yourself to distrust your own judgment. Then, even when life places a clear choice in front of you, you feel frozen because you have spent too long outsourcing your wisdom. You may know what you want, but you do not trust yourself enough to choose it. You may sense what is wrong, but you wait for someone else to confirm it before you act. This is one of the hidden costs of following blindly. You do not just lose direction, you lose the confidence to choose direction. There is a certain sadness in becoming dependent on approval. Approval is never stable. People may praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. They may support you when your choices benefit them and withdraw support when your growth makes them uncomfortable. They may call you wise when you agree with them and selfish when you begin thinking differently. If your identity depends on their reaction, then your peace will always be controlled by their mood. You will live like a leaf in the wind, moved by every comment, every judgment, every facial expression, every silence, every opinion, every expectation. A person who lives this way may be surrounded by people, but inside they are never truly settled. To think for yourself, you must be willing to face the discomfort of people not understanding you. This is not easy, because human beings naturally want belonging. We want to be seen, accepted, and supported. But there is a kind of belonging that costs too much. There is a belonging that requires you to shrink, pretend, hide, and silence yourself. There is a belonging that asks you to betray your own mind in exchange for temporary acceptance. That is not love. That is not community. That is not guidance. That is a quiet prison decorated with familiar faces. The people who truly belong in your life will not require you to abandon yourself in order to keep them. They may challenge you, advise you, and warn you, but they will not demand ownership over your mind. They will not punish you for growing. They will not make love conditional upon obedience. They will not make you feel guilty for becoming clearer, stronger, or more honest. True support does not erase your individuality. It helps you become more responsible with it. But before you can recognize that kind of support, you must stop confusing control with care. Some people call it care when they are actually afraid of losing influence over you. Some people call it guidance when they are actually trying to keep you inside the version of yourself that made them comfortable. Some people call it concern when they are actually projecting their fear onto your future. And because these words sound gentle, you may obey them without realizing that your life is being shaped by someone else's anxiety. This does not mean that everyone who disagrees with you is controlling you. Sometimes correction is necessary. Sometimes someone sees a danger you are ignoring. Sometimes people who love you speak firmly because they do not want to watch you suffer. Thinking for yourself does not mean rejecting every warning. It means learning to examine the spirit behind the words. Does their advice lead you toward responsibility, or does it lead you into fear? Does it help you become wiser, or does it make you smaller? Does it respect your ability to decide, or does it pressure you into surrendering your own mind? These questions help you separate care from control. One of the clearest signs that you have been following others too much is that you no longer know what you actually want. When someone asks you about your dreams, you give answers that sound practical, impressive, or acceptable, but not alive. You speak from memory, not from passion. You describe what people expect from you, not what truly calls you. Your goals become borrowed, your taste becomes borrowed, your opinions become borrowed, your definition of success becomes borrowed, and slowly, your own desires become so quiet that you mistake their silence for absence. But your true self is not gone. It is buried under layers of approval-seeking, fear, comparison, and emotional conditioning. It is still there, waiting beneath the noise. Sometimes it speaks through discomfort, sometimes it speaks through longing, sometimes it speaks through envy when you see someone else living freely. Sometimes it speaks through sadness when you imagine the life you never dared to choose. These emotions are not always signs of weakness. Sometimes they are messages from the part of you that still wants to be recovered. If you want to find yourself again, you must begin by asking honest questions without rushing to answer them for other people. What do I actually believe? What do I want when I am not trying to impress anyone? What path would I choose if I were not afraid of criticism? What have I been pretending to enjoy? What am I doing only because people expect it from me? What part of my life looks correct but feels wrong? What dream have I buried because someone else made me doubt it? These questions may be uncomfortable, but they are the doorway back to yourself. At first, your answers may feel unclear because you have spent so long listening outward that listening inward feels unfamiliar. Do not be discouraged. Self-trust returns through practice. You rebuild it by making small, honest choices. You rebuild it by telling the truth about what you like and dislike. You rebuild it by saying no when your energy says no. You rebuild it by choosing silence instead of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You rebuild it by honoring your own judgment in small matters until your mind remembers that it is allowed to lead. The world may not celebrate this process immediately. In fact, some people may resist it because your new clarity changes the role you used to play in their life. If you are always agreeable, your boundaries will feel like rebellion. If you are always available, your self-respect will feel like rejection. If you are always silent, your honesty will feel like disrespect. If you are always dependent on approval, your independence will feel like arrogance. But you must not let their discomfort convince you that your growth is wrong. Sometimes people call you difficult only because you stopped being easy to control. There is a season in every thinking person's life when they must choose between being accepted as a false self or being misunderstood as a real one. This choice is painful, but it is necessary. If you choose the false self, you may keep the approval of others, but you will continue losing peace within yourself. If you choose the real self, you may lose some approval, but you will begin recovering your freedom. And freedom is not always loud. Sometimes freedom is simply waking up and realizing that you no longer need to ask permission to be honest with your own life. The price of following others is losing yourself slowly, but the reward of thinking for yourself is finding yourself deeply. You begin to recognize your own voice again. You begin to make choices that may not impress everyone, but finally feel aligned. You begin to understand that peace is not created by pleasing the crowd, but by living in agreement with your inner truth. You begin to discover that being yourself may cost you approval, but pretending to be someone else costs you your soul. So be careful whose path you copy. Be careful whose fears you adopt. Be careful whose opinions you turn into laws. Be careful whose approval you chase. Be careful whose version of success you accept without question, because every borrowed direction carries a hidden cost. And if you follow too many voices for too long, you may wake up one day surrounded by everything people told you to want, while feeling painfully distant from everything you were meant to become. Listen to others, but do not abandon yourself to belong. Learn from others, but do not become a shadow of their expectations. Respect the world, but do not let the world erase the person inside you. Your life is not a group decision. Your purpose is not a public vote. Your peace is not something you should sacrifice to keep everyone comfortable. And the day you stop following others blindly is the day you begin returning to the person you were before fear taught you to disappear. Chapter 4. Thinking for yourself requires courage, not rebellion. Thinking for yourself does not mean fighting everyone, rejecting every opinion, or living as if every voice outside you is your enemy. Many people misunderstand independence because they confuse it with rebellion. They think that to be strong-minded, they must always disagree. They think that to be different, they must always oppose the crowd. They think that to be free, they must reject every rule, every tradition, every warning, and every piece of advice that comes from another person. But this is not true freedom. This is only another form of being controlled, because if your whole identity is built on doing the opposite of what others say, then others are still deciding your direction. True independent thinking is not noisy. It is not childish. It is not driven by ego. It does not need to prove itself in every conversation. It does not need to attack people to feel powerful. It does not need to embarrass others to look intelligent. True independent thinking is calm, patient, honest, and deeply responsible. It listens before it decides. It studies before it rejects. It questions before it follows. It accepts truth even when truth comes from people it does not fully agree with. It rejects falsehood even when falsehood is popular, comfortable, or emotionally tempting. This is why thinking for yourself requires courage, not rebellion. Rebellion often comes from pain, anger, pride, or the desire to prove something. Courage comes from clarity. Rebellion says, I will not listen because I want to feel powerful. Courage says, I will listen carefully, but I will not surrender my judgment. Rebellion wants to break away from others just to feel separate. Courage wants to stand in truth even when standing in truth feels lonely. Rebellion reacts against pressure. Courage rises above pressure. There is a great difference between being difficult and being discerning. A difficult person refuses wisdom because their ego cannot tolerate guidance. A discerning person welcomes wisdom but refuses control. A difficult person argues with everyone because they are addicted to being right. A discerning person does not need to win every argument because they are more interested in truth than victory. A difficult person rejects correction and calls it freedom. A discerning person accepts correction when it is honest, useful, and aligned with reality. If you want to think for yourself, you must not become someone who cannot be taught. You must become someone who cannot be blindly led. The world does not need more people who are loud in their opinions but empty in their understanding. The world needs people who can sit quietly with an idea, examine it deeply, test it honestly, and decide with maturity. It is easy to repeat what everyone else is saying. It is also easy to reject what everyone else is saying just to appear different. But it is much harder to think patiently because real thinking demands humility. It demands that you admit you might be wrong. It demands that you slow down before reacting. It demands that you separate your emotions from the facts in front of you. It demands that you ask whether your belief is truly yours or something you inherited, copied, or accepted because it gave you comfort. Many people never think for themselves because they are afraid of the responsibility that comes with it. Following others gives you someone to blame. If things go wrong, you can say they told me to do it. You can say everyone was doing the same thing. You can say I was only following the path people expected. But when you think for yourself, you can no longer hide behind the crowd. Your choices become yours. Your mistakes become yours. Your growth becomes yours. Your consequences become yours. This is why freedom frightens many people. They want the beauty of personal power without the burden of personal responsibility. But you cannot separate the two. If you want to own your life, you must own your decisions. If you want to stop being controlled by other people's opinions, you must also stop blaming other people for the path you choose. This is the mature side of independence that many people avoid. It is not enough to say, I will follow my own mind. You must also be willing to say, I will accept the consequences of following my own mind. That sentence is not easy. It requires strength. It requires honesty. It requires a willingness to learn from failure without running back to the crowd in shame. Courage is especially needed because people often become uncomfortable when you stop being easy to influence. When you begin thinking for yourself, some people will not see it as growth. They will see it as disrespect. They will say you have changed. They will say you no longer listen. They will say you think you are better than everyone. They will accuse you of pride because you no longer let their fear make your decisions. But you must understand that not every accusation deserves your confusion. Sometimes people call you arrogant simply because you have stopped asking permission to trust yourself. There will be moments when your independent thinking disappoints people you love. This is one of the hardest parts. It is easier to ignore strangers than to stand firm when someone close to you disapproves. A stranger's judgment may sting, but a loved one's disappointment can feel heavy in the chest. You may begin to question yourself. You may wonder whether you are being selfish. You may feel guilty for choosing a path that others do not understand. But love does not require you to surrender your mind. Respect does not require you to abandon your truth. Gratitude does not require lifelong obedience to opinions that no longer fit the person you are becoming. You can honor people without letting them control you. You can love people without letting them design your future. You can respect their experience without letting their experience become the limit of your vision. This balance is not easy, but it is necessary. If you become harsh, you may damage relationships unnecessarily. If you become weak, you may damage yourself silently. The wise path is neither cruelty nor surrender. The wise path is respectful firmness. It is the ability to say, I hear you, I value you, I understand your concern, but I must still choose what aligns with my life. This kind of courage does not always look dramatic. Sometimes courage is not quitting a job in one emotional moment. Sometimes courage is quietly admitting that your current path is not honest. Sometimes courage is not shouting your dreams to the world. Sometimes courage is protecting them from people who would poison them too early. Sometimes courage is not cutting everyone off. Sometimes courage is simply no longer giving unlimited access to voices that weaken your clarity. Sometimes courage is not proving people wrong. Sometimes courage is becoming so committed to your own growth that their doubt no longer decides your direction. Thinking for yourself also requires the courage to be misunderstood. Almost every person who chooses a different path must pass through a season where others do not understand them. People may misunderstand your silence. They may misunderstand your discipline. They may misunderstand your boundaries. They may misunderstand your change in priorities. They may misunderstand your need for solitude. They may misunderstand your refusal to follow the same old patterns. But misunderstanding is not always a sign that you are wrong. Sometimes it is a sign that your life is moving beyond the language other people use to define you. You cannot explain every stage of your growth to people who are committed to seeing you through an old version of yourself. Some people will only understand who you were, not who you are becoming. They will keep speaking to your past while you are trying to build your future. They will keep reminding you of old mistakes, old weaknesses, old fears, and old limitations, because that is the version of you they know how to handle. But you are not required to remain understandable to people who only feel safe when you remain unchanged. There is a quiet bravery in allowing people to think what they think while you continue walking your path. You do not need to hold a court session for every decision. You do not need to present evidence to everyone who questions your growth. You do not need to convince people who benefit from your uncertainty. Sometimes the most powerful answer is consistency. You let time speak. You let your discipline speak. You let your peace speak. You let the life you build become the explanation that your words could never provide. Another reason courage is necessary is because independent thinking may lead you away from comfort. The crowd usually offers ready-made answers. It tells you what success should look like, what age you should achieve things, what kind of person you should become, what dreams are acceptable, what risks are foolish, and what lifestyle deserves respect. When you follow that script, you may feel trapped, but at least the path is familiar. When you begin thinking for yourself, You may have to walk into uncertainty. You may have to build a road where there is no clear road. You may have to trust a vision before anyone else can see it. You may have to make decisions without applause. This is where many people turn back. They say they want freedom, but they panic when freedom does not come with guarantees. They say they want to be original, but they become uncomfortable when originality requires loneliness. They say they want to live authentically, but they start doubting themselves when authenticity costs them approval. But the path to a life that is truly yours will often require you to walk through seasons where certainty is low, support is limited, and your only proof is the quiet conviction that you cannot keep betraying yourself. Courage does not mean you never feel fear. Courage means fear no longer becomes your master. You may still feel nervous when you make a decision that others do not support. You may still feel doubt when you step away from the expected path. You may still wonder whether you are making a mistake. That is human, but courage allows you to move with awareness instead of paralysis. It allows you to say, I do not know everything, but I know I cannot keep living by fear. It allows you to take responsibility for learning as you go. There is also courage in changing your mind when you discover better truth. Some people think independent thinking means never admitting mistakes, but a mind that cannot change is not free. It is trapped by pride. If you choose a path and later realize it was not right, you are allowed to adjust. If you believed something and later discover it was incomplete, you are allowed to grow. If you followed your own judgment and made a mistake, you are allowed to learn without humiliating yourself. Thinking for yourself is not the promise that you will always be right. It is the promise that you will remain awake, honest, and responsible. This is important because fear of mistakes keeps many people dependent on others. They think that if they follow someone else, they can avoid failure. But following blindly does not protect you from mistakes. It only makes the mistake less honest. At least when you think for yourself, your mistakes can teach you directly. They become part of your growth. They reveal your blind spots. They sharpen your judgment. They strengthen your awareness. But when you live by borrowed decisions, even your mistakes feel empty because they did not come from your own courage. You suffer the consequence without gaining the dignity of having chosen consciously. The person who thinks for himself must learn to hold both humility and confidence. Humility says, I can learn from anyone. Confidence says, but I must still think for myself. Humility says, I may be wrong. Confidence says, but I will not surrender my judgment just because someone else sounds certain. Humility keeps you open. Confidence keeps you grounded. Without humility, independent thinking becomes arrogance. Without confidence, listening becomes obedience. You need both if you want to live wisely. As you grow in this courage, your relationship with other people's opinions begins to change. Their praise becomes pleasant, but not necessary. Their criticism becomes useful when truthful, but not destructive when empty. Their doubt becomes something to consider, not something to obey. Their approval becomes something you appreciate, not something you depend on. This is one of the greatest freedoms in life. To hear the world without being controlled by it, you begin to understand that your peace cannot be built on everyone agreeing with you. There will always be someone who thinks you are wrong. There will always be someone who does not understand your timing. There will always be someone who thinks your dream is too big, too strange, too risky, too late, or too different. If you wait until every voice becomes supportive, you may wait until your life is over. The permission you are waiting for may never come. And if it does come, it may come too late to save the years you spent hesitating. So you must learn to move with thoughtful courage, not careless courage, not arrogant courage, not rebellious courage, thoughtful courage. The kind that listens, reflects, prepares, accepts risk, and then acts. The kind that does not need to insult the crowd in order to leave it. The kind that does not need to hate people in order to disagree with them. The kind that understands that your path can be different without making everyone else your enemy. This is the strength you are building. A strength that is quiet but firm. A strength that can sit in a room full of opinions and still remain connected to its own center. A strength that can receive advice without becoming confused by every voice. A strength that can be corrected without collapsing and criticized without surrendering. A strength that can stand alone when necessary, but still remain open-hearted enough to learn. Thinking for yourself will not always make your life easier at first, but it will make your life more honest. It may cost you approval, but it will return your self-respect. It may create uncomfortable conversations, but it will end the deeper discomfort of living a false life. It may disappoint some people, but it will save you from disappointing the person you must live with every day, yourself. So do not become rebellious just to prove that you are free. Do not reject everyone just to feel strong. Do not confuse independence with pride. Instead, become courageous enough to listen without surrendering, humble enough to learn without copying, and grounded enough to choose without needing the whole world to agree. Because the goal is not to be against everyone. The goal is to finally be loyal to the truth within you. Chapter 5. Your inner voice gets stronger when you stop begging for approval. There is a quiet voice inside every person that knows more than they often admit. But most people spend years drowning that voice beneath the noise of approval. They do not always ignore themselves because they are weak. Sometimes they ignore themselves because they were trained to believe that being accepted is safer than being honest. They learned to measure the value of their choices by the reactions of others. If people smiled, they felt right. If people criticized, they felt wrong. If people praised them, they felt worthy. If people misunderstood them, they began questioning everything. Slowly, their inner voice became softer, not because it disappeared, but because they kept teaching it that someone else's opinion mattered more. Approval is powerful because it feels like belonging. When people approve of you, you feel seen, welcomed, and protected from judgment. You feel as though your choices have been given permission to exist. This is why many people become addicted to approval without realizing it. They do not call it addiction. They call it being respectful. They call it being careful. They call it thinking practically. They call it not wanting problems. But underneath these polite names, there is often a hidden fear. The fear that if they choose themselves, people will withdraw love, attention, respect, or support. The problem is that approval never stays still. The same people who praise you today may question you tomorrow. The same crowd that celebrates one version of you may reject the next version. The same voices that once told you to dream bigger may become uncomfortable when your dream begins carrying you beyond their control. If your inner peace depends on being approved by changing people, then your mind will never feel stable. You will keep adjusting yourself to match whoever is watching. You will become a different person in different rooms, not because you are flexible, but because you are afraid. When you beg for approval, you give other people the power to define your confidence. You begin to ask, do they like this, before asking, do I believe this? You begin to ask, will they understand, before asking, is this true for me? You begin to ask, will they support me, before asking, can I support myself? This is how the inner voice becomes weak, not through one decision, but through repeated abandonment. Every time you ignore your honest thought because someone may disagree, you make your inner voice less trusted. Every time you change your direction because someone looks disappointed, you teach yourself that your own judgment is not enough. There are people who cannot make even small decisions without asking everyone around them. They ask what to wear, what to study, what to post, what to say, what to choose, what to believe, what to dream, and what to avoid. At first, this may look humble, but often it is a sign that self-trust has been damaged. They are not looking for wisdom. They are looking for permission. They are not gathering information. They are trying to avoid the discomfort of owning a decision. They want someone else to carry the responsibility so that if the result hurts, they can say, I only did what I was told. But a life built on permission becomes a very small life. You may avoid some criticism, but you also avoid your own growth. You may avoid some mistakes, but you also avoid the strength that comes from learning directly. You may feel protected from judgment, but you remain trapped inside dependence. A person who always needs approval before moving will never move freely. Their future will be delayed by every opinion, every doubt, every warning, and every raised eyebrow. Your inner voice grows stronger when you begin making decisions without turning every choice into a public meeting. This does not mean you never ask for advice. It means you stop asking for permission to trust what you already know. It means you learn the difference between seeking guidance and seeking validation. Guidance helps you see clearly. Validation only helps you feel safe for a moment. Guidance sharpens your decision. Validation often replaces your decision. Guidance says, consider this. Validation says, you are only allowed to move if someone agrees. The first step in strengthening your inner voice is learning to sit with your own thoughts before inviting the world into them. When a decision appears in front of you, do not immediately run to everyone else. Pause. Ask yourself what you truly think. Ask yourself what your values say. Ask yourself what your fear says. Ask yourself what your wisdom says. Ask yourself what choice would still feel honest if nobody praised it. This quiet pause is important because it gives your inner voice room to speak before other voices enter and cover it. Many people never hear themselves because they consult others too quickly. Before their own thought has fully formed, they expose it to criticism, comparison, doubt, jokes, warnings, and opinions. Their dream is still young, still fragile, still finding language, and they place it in front of people who may not know how to handle something delicate. Then, when others respond with fear or confusion, the person believes the dream itself is wrong. But sometimes the dream was not wrong. It was simply shared too early with people who did not have the vision to protect it. You must learn that not every thought needs an audience. Not every dream needs an announcement. Not every decision needs approval before it can become real. Some parts of your growth must be protected in silence until they are strong enough to face misunderstanding. This is not secrecy from fear. It is protection from unnecessary noise. A seed does not grow faster because many people are watching it. In fact, some things grow best when they are hidden, watered quietly, and allowed to develop roots before they face the open air. When you stop begging for approval, you begin to notice how much energy you were wasting on managing other people's reactions. You were not only making decisions, you were also imagining who would be upset, who would judge, who would ask questions, who would misunderstand, who would laugh, who would gossip, who would compare you to someone else, who would withdraw affection, and who would make you feel guilty. That mental weight can exhaust a person before they even take action. Approval seeking turns every choice into a courtroom where you are both the accused and the defender. But when your inner voice becomes stronger, you stop putting your life on trial. You still care about people, but you no longer treat their discomfort as proof that you are wrong. You still respect advice, but you no longer confuse disagreement with danger. You still listen to criticism, but you no longer allow empty criticism to become your identity. You become calmer because you are no longer constantly checking whether the world gives you permission to be yourself. This calmness does not happen in one day. It is built through repeated acts of self-respect. You strengthen your inner voice by making small promises to yourself and keeping them. You strengthen it by choosing what is right for you even when it is not impressive to others. You strengthen it by saying no without writing a long speech to prove that your no is valid. You strengthen it by allowing people to misunderstand one decision without rushing to repair their image of you. You strengthen it by doing the quiet work that nobody claps for, because you know your growth does not become real only when someone notices. One of the most powerful practices is learning to ask yourself, what would I choose if I did not need applause? This question removes performance from your decision. It forces you to separate your true desire from your desire to be admired. Many people think they want certain things, but what they actually want is the approval attached to those things. They want the career people respect, the relationship people envy, the lifestyle people praise, the image people applaud, and the identity people understand. But when applause is removed, they realize they may not want the thing itself. They only wanted to feel valuable in the eyes of others. This is why approval can be dangerous. It can make borrowed dreams feel like personal dreams. It can make a person chase a life that looks beautiful to everyone except the one living it. It can make you confuse attention with fulfillment, praise with purpose, and recognition with peace. But the inner voice does not speak in applause. It speaks in alignment. It speaks through the quiet sense that something is honest, meaningful, and deeply connected to who you are becoming. It may not always be loud, but it carries a different kind of certainty. There will be times when your inner voice tells you to choose something that others do not immediately understand. It may tell you to slow down when everyone tells you to rush. It may tell you to walk away when people tell you to tolerate more. It may tell you to begin again when others say it is too late. It may tell you to protect your peace when people accuse you of being selfish. It may tell you to take a path that has no applause in the beginning, but has deep meaning in the end. In those moments, approval seeking will tempt you to betray yourself. It will whisper, "What will they think?" But self-trust will ask a better question: what will happen to me if I keep ignoring what I know? The pain of being judged is temporary, but the pain of self-betrayal can last for years. People may criticize your decision for a day, a week, or a season, but you are the one who must live inside the result. You are the one who must wake up with the consequences. You are the one who must carry the weight of a life chosen from fear. This is why you must be careful not to give permanent power to temporary opinions. Many people who judge your choices will move on quickly. They will forget what they said. They will become busy with their own lives. But you may spend years living with the cost of obeying them. When you stop begging for approval, some people may test you. They may withdraw warmth to see if you will come running back. They may criticize your confidence to see if they can make you doubt yourself again. They may call you selfish because your boundaries no longer serve their convenience. They may say you have changed, hoping guilt will return you to the old version they could influence more easily. In these moments, you must remain steady, not harsh, not prideful, steady. Your growth does not require everyone's celebration. Some people will only appreciate your independence after it produces results. They may doubt your discipline while it is invisible, then praise your success when it becomes undeniable. They may misunderstand your silence while you are building, then admire your transformation when it becomes obvious. If you live for their early approval, you may quit before your life has time to prove what your heart already knew. This is why you must learn to approve of yourself in the building season, before the results come, before the applause comes, before the people who doubted you begin changing their tone, before the world understands what you are doing. You must be able to say, "I know why I am choosing this. I know what I am building. I know what this means to me." That kind of self-approval is not arrogance. It is emotional survival. It is the strength that keeps you moving when outside validation is absent. The inner voice becomes stronger through honesty. You cannot trust yourself if you keep lying to yourself. If something hurts you, admit it. If a path is wrong for you, admit it. If you are chasing something only for approval, admit it. If you are afraid, admit it. If you are staying small to avoid judgment, admit it. Honesty is the soil where self-trust grows. A person who tells themselves the truth becomes harder to manipulate because they are no longer dependent on other people to define reality for them. The inner voice also becomes stronger through solitude. Solitude is not loneliness when it is used wisely. It is the space where your own thoughts can breathe. It is where you begin to notice which desires are yours and which were planted by comparison. It is where you hear the difference between fear and intuition. It is where you discover whether you truly want something or only want to be seen wanting it. Without solitude, your mind can become crowded with voices that never leave enough room for your own wisdom. But solitude can feel uncomfortable at first because approval-seeking often keeps people busy. They stay connected, distracted, entertained, and surrounded because they are afraid of what may rise in silence. In silence, you may realize that you are tired of pretending. You may realize that you do not want the life people praised you for building. You may realize that some relationships survive only because you keep abandoning your boundaries. You may realize that your confidence was never weak, only buried under years of needing permission. These realizations can be painful, but they are also freeing. You cannot reclaim your life without first seeing where you gave it away. As your inner voice grows, you become less reactive. A negative comment no longer ruins your whole day. A lack of support no longer means you must stop. A person's confusion no longer becomes your confusion. You begin to understand that people can disagree with you, and you can still be stable. People can dislike your decision, and you can still respect yourself. People can misunderstand your motives, and you can still move with a clean heart. This is the emotional independence that approval seeking can never give you. You also become more selective about whose opinion matters. Not every voice deserves equal access to your mind. The opinion of someone who has wisdom, integrity, love, and experience should not carry the same weight as the opinion of someone who speaks from jealousy, fear, insecurity, or habit. Part of maturity is learning that you do not need to emotionally respond to every comment. You can hear something and not absorb it. You can notice criticism and not carry it. You can respect a person and still decide that their opinion does not belong in the center of your life. This does not make you cold, it makes you clear. In fact, when you stop begging for approval, your relationships can become healthier because you no longer need people to constantly validate you. You can love them without needing them to agree with every choice. You can listen to them without becoming emotionally controlled. You can accept support without becoming dependent on it. You can handle disagreement without turning it into a crisis. Approval seeking often creates hidden resentment because you blame people for not giving you the validation you never learned to give yourself. Self-trust removes that burden from your relationships. A strong inner voice does not mean you always feel certain. There will still be moments of doubt. There will still be decisions that feel heavy. There will still be times when you wish someone could guarantee that everything will work out. But the difference is that doubt no longer makes you surrender your mind. You can feel uncertain and still choose responsibly. You can feel fear and still stay honest. You can seek advice and still remain the final decision maker in your own life. This is what it means to take your mind back. It means you no longer live as a reflection of other people's reactions. It means you stop waiting for the crowd to tell you who you are allowed to become. It means you understand that the people who truly love you may guide you, but they should not own you. It means you stop mistaking approval for truth and criticism for failure. It means you become brave enough to live from the inside out. The world will always offer you approval at a price. It will approve of you if you fit into its expectations. It will approve of you if you stay understandable. It will approve of you if you do not make others question their own choices. It will approve of you if you remain useful, agreeable, predictable, and easy to define. But the price of that approval may be your freedom, your honesty, your peace, and your purpose. You must decide whether being accepted as someone false is worth losing the person you were meant to become. So stop begging the world to approve of your life before you start living it. Stop asking everyone to understand your direction before you take the first step. Stop giving people the power to make you abandon what your deeper self knows. Listen, learn, reflect, and stay humble. But do not keep placing your confidence in the hands of people who cannot live your life for you. Your inner voice is not weak. It has only been ignored too many times. Begin listening to it again. Begin honoring it in small decisions. Begin protecting it from unnecessary noise. Begin trusting it enough to let it guide you through the seasons where approval is absent. Because the day you stop begging for approval is the day your own voice finally begins to sound like home. Chapter 6. Learn from everyone, copy no one. One of the greatest signs of a mature mind is the ability to learn from every person without becoming a copy of any person. Because life is full of teachers, but not every teacher is meant to become your identity. Every human being you meet carries a lesson, either through their wisdom, their mistakes, their strength, their weakness, their kindness, their cruelty, their success, their failure, their discipline, their regret, their courage, or their fear. Some people teach you what to become. Some people teach you what to avoid. Some people show you the beauty of patience, while others show you the cost of anger. Some people inspire you through their growth, while others warn you through the damage they created by refusing to grow. If you are awake, the whole world becomes a classroom. But if you are not careful, you may mistake learning for imitation, and imitation can quietly steal the originality of your life. To learn from someone is wisdom, but to copy someone blindly is self-abandonment. Learning means you observe a principle and apply it with your own understanding. Copying means you borrow another person's path without asking whether it belongs to you. Learning keeps your mind alive. Copying puts your mind to sleep. Learning allows you to grow while remaining yourself. Copying makes you shrink into a version of someone else. The difference may seem small in the beginning, but over time it becomes the difference between a life that feels deeply aligned and a life that feels successful on the outside but empty on the inside. Many people do not realize how much of their life is copied. They copy what success should look like. They copy what confidence should sound like. They copy what happiness should include. They copy the dreams of people they admire. They copy the opinions of people who speak loudly. They copy the lifestyle of people who receive attention. They copy the habits of people they think are ahead of them. They copy the tone, the ambition, the goals, the image, and even the insecurities of people around them. Then they wonder why their life does not feel like their own. The answer is painful but simple. You cannot feel at home inside a life that was assembled from other people's pieces. The world encourages copying because copying is easy to sell. People will tell you, do exactly what I did. They will show you their routine, their mindset, their formula, their steps, their method, their habits, their lifestyle, and their story. Some of it may be useful, some of it may be powerful, some of it may open your eyes, but the danger begins when you forget that their path worked inside their circumstances, their personality, their timing, their environment, their strengths, their sacrifices, and their private struggles. You may be able to learn from their discipline, but you cannot simply wear their destiny like borrowed clothes and expect it to fit your soul. A person who thinks for himself does not worship examples, he studies them. He does not look at someone successful and say, I must become exactly like them. He asks, what principle made them strong? What habit helped them grow? What mistake can I avoid? What mindset can I adapt to my own life? This is the difference between a follower and a thinker. A follower copies the surface. A thinker extracts the wisdom beneath the surface. A follower imitates the visible result. A thinker studies the invisible process. A follower wants the image. A thinker wants the understanding. This matters because the surface of someone's life is often misleading. You may see their confidence, but not the years of doubt they had to overcome. You may see their success, but not the hidden sacrifices that success demanded. You may see their calmness, but not the storms that trained their mind. You may see their recognition, but not the loneliness they endured before anyone believed in them. If you copy only what is visible, you may chase the appearance of greatness without building the foundation that greatness requires. You may copy the style without the substance, the habits without the reason, the confidence without the character, and the results without the responsibility. This is why copying often leads to frustration. You may follow someone else's exact routine and still feel stuck. You may repeat their words and still feel powerless. You may imitate their discipline and still feel disconnected. You may chase their version of success and still feel empty when you get close to it. Not because the person was wrong, and not because you are incapable, but because you were never meant to become their duplicate. Their lesson may be useful, but their life is not your blueprint. Your path must be built with your own nature, your own values, your own strengths, your own limits, your own timing, and your own purpose. There is a kind of insecurity that hides behind imitation. It says, if I become like someone who is admired, then maybe I will finally feel valuable. It says, if I copy the person who looks successful, then maybe I can avoid the fear of creating my own way. It says, if I follow a proven path exactly, then maybe I will not have to face uncertainty. But no amount of imitation can heal the fear of being yourself. You may receive attention by copying what works for others, but attention is not the same as peace. You may gain approval by fitting into a familiar pattern, but approval is not the same as fulfillment. The deepest confidence comes not from becoming a perfect copy, but from becoming an honest original. To learn from everyone without copying anyone, you must first know yourself. Without self-knowledge, every impressive person becomes a possible identity for you to borrow. When you do not know your values, you adopt the values of whoever sounds convincing. When you do not know your purpose, you chase the purpose of whoever looks successful. When you do not know your strengths, you try to force yourself into the strengths of others. When you do not know your rhythm, you punish yourself for not moving like someone else. Self-knowledge protects you from becoming a mirror of every person you admire. Ask yourself what kind of life actually feels meaningful to you when nobody is watching. Ask yourself what kind of success would still satisfy you if nobody clapped for it. Ask yourself what work makes you feel alive, not just important. Ask yourself what values you refuse to sacrifice even for applause. Ask yourself what kind of person you want to become in private, not just what image you want to present in public. These questions are not small. They are the foundation of originality. Without them, you will keep collecting fragments from other people and calling the collection your personality. The wise person learns from the disciplined without copying their hardness. He learns from the successful without copying their ego. He learns from the peaceful without copying their silence in moments where truth must be spoken. He learns from the bold without copying their recklessness. He learns from the patient without copying passivity. He learns from the ambitious without copying obsession. He learns from the confident without copying arrogance. He learns from the humble without copying self-erasure. This is wisdom, the ability to take the medicine without swallowing the poison mixed with it. Not every person you admire is balanced. Someone may be brilliant in business but broken in relationships. Someone may be disciplined in work but careless with their health. Someone may be charming in public but cruel in private. Someone may be spiritually wise in speech but immature in behavior. Someone may be successful in one area and deeply lost in another. If you copy people completely, you may inherit not only their strengths but also their blind spots. But if you learn with awareness, you can receive the lesson without becoming trapped in the weakness. This is why admiration must be handled carefully. Admiration can open your mind, but it can also blind you. When you admire someone too much, you may stop questioning them. You may excuse behavior you should examine. You may treat their opinion as final because their image impresses you. You may allow their confidence to replace your discernment. But no human being should be placed so high in your mind that you stop thinking clearly in their presence. Respect people, learn from people, appreciate what they have built, but never turn admiration into surrender. The person who thinks for himself can sit before greatness and still keep his own mind awake. He can read a powerful book without making the author his master. He can listen to a successful person without worshipping their method. He can admire a leader without becoming blind to their flaws. He can learn from a teacher without giving that teacher ownership of his future. This kind of balance is rare because many people either reject guidance completely or surrender to it completely. But maturity lives in the middle. It says, I will learn deeply, but I will remain responsible for what I accept. There is also a hidden danger in copying people from a distance. From far away, everyone's life looks simpler than it is. You may see a person's success online, their confidence, their beautiful words, their perfect moments, their polished image, and think their life is the answer to yours. But what you see is only a selected window. You do not see their full cost. You do not see the private pressure. You do not see the compromises. You do not see the emotional weight. You do not see the nights they questioned everything. You do not see the things they lost while gaining what you admire. If you copy a life you have only seen from the outside, you may end up chasing a fantasy, not a truth. This is why comparison and imitation often travel together. First, you compare your life to someone else's highlight. Then you decide your path is not enough. Then you begin copying them in order to escape the discomfort of feeling behind. But your life is not behind simply because it is different. Your timing is not wrong simply because someone else arrived earlier. Your path is not weak simply because it does not look impressive yet. Many people destroy their own pace because they keep measuring it against someone whose full story they do not know. You must learn the dignity of your own pace. Some people grow quickly in public but remain unstable in private. Some people appear delayed, but they are building foundations that will carry them for a lifetime. Some people bloom early and fade early. Some people seem invisible for years and then rise with a strength that cannot be ignored. If you copy someone else's timing, you may force yourself into seasons you are not ready for. If you copy someone else's direction, you may abandon the road that was preparing you for something deeper. Your life has its own rhythm, and wisdom is learning how to honor it without becoming lazy, jealous, or afraid. Learning without copying also requires the courage to be influenced without being swallowed. Influence is not bad. Every person is shaped by something. We are shaped by books, conversations, experiences, mentors, pain, love, failure, culture, family, and the world around us. The goal is not to become untouched by influence. That is impossible. The goal is to become conscious of influence. You must ask, what is shaping me? Is it making me more awake or more dependent? Is it helping me become more truthful or more performative? Is it strengthening my character or only improving my image? Is it bringing me closer to myself or pulling me away from myself? When you become conscious of influence, you stop absorbing everything. You become selective. You do not let every trend enter your identity. You do not let every opinion rearrange your beliefs. You do not let every successful person redefine your goals. You do not let every popular lifestyle create dissatisfaction with your own life. You learn to say, this is useful, I will keep it. You also learn to say, this is not for me, I will leave it. That simple ability is powerful. It protects your mind from becoming crowded with borrowed desires. Borrowed desire is one of the quietest forms of confusion. It happens when you want something only because someone else made it look desirable. You did not want that lifestyle until you saw others praised for it. You did not want that status until society told you it mattered. You did not want that path until someone made your own path feel small. You did not want that image until comparison made your ordinary life feel unacceptable. Borrowed desire can make you run for years toward a destination that does not belong to your soul. And when you arrive, you may wonder why victory feels empty. To avoid this, you must ask yourself whether your desire gives you energy or only gives you imagined approval. Does this goal come from meaning or from comparison? Does it fit your values or only your ego? Would you still want it if nobody could see it? Would you still respect it if it did not make you look impressive? Would it bring peace to your inner life or only status to your outer life? These questions help you separate real desire from borrowed desire. A thinker does not fear being inspired, but he refuses to become possessed by inspiration. Inspiration should awaken your possibilities, not erase your individuality. When you see someone live bravely, let it remind you to be brave in your own way. When you see someone speak powerfully, let it remind you to find your own voice. When you see someone build something meaningful, let it remind you to build what is meaningful to you. The purpose of inspiration is not to make you become them. It is to make you stop sleeping on yourself. There is a deep peace in realizing that you do not need to become anyone else in order to become extraordinary. You do not need someone else's personality. You do not need someone else's story. You do not need someone else's exact method. You do not need someone else's timing. You can study many lives and still build one that is honestly yours. You can admire greatness without disappearing into it. You can learn from the world without letting the world overwrite your soul. But this kind of originality requires patience, because copying gives faster identity. When you copy someone, you instantly feel like you know who to be. You wear their language, you borrow their confidence, you follow their structure, you imitate their choices. For a moment, You feel less uncertain. But borrowed identity is weak because it collapses when circumstances change. Original identity takes longer to build because it requires questioning, experimenting, failing, reflecting, and choosing. But once it is built, it becomes strong because it comes from within. Do not be afraid of the slow process of becoming yourself. You may try things and realize they do not fit. You may admire someone and later discover you only needed one lesson from them, not their entire way of life. You may follow a method for a while and then adapt it. You may change your mind. You may outgrow old influences. You may become less impressed by things that once controlled your imagination. This is not confusion. This is refinement. You are learning what belongs to you and what does not. The person who copies cannot refine because they are too busy preserving an image. But the person who learns honestly can evolve. He can say, "This helped me before, but it no longer fits." He can say, "I respect this person, but I do not agree with everything they teach." He can say, "This path worked for them, but I must choose differently." He can say, "I was inspired by that, but I will express it in my own way." This flexibility is not weakness. It is the sign of a living mind. You must also be careful not to copy pain. Sometimes people build their identity around wounds, and others mistake that wounded identity for depth. A person may become cold because they were betrayed, and you may think coldness is strength. A person may become distrustful because they were hurt, and you may think distrust is wisdom. A person may become emotionally unavailable because they were abandoned, and you may think distance is power. But not everything that looks strong is healed. Sometimes it is only pain wearing armor. Learn from people's wounds, but do not adopt their defenses as your personality. True strength is not becoming like the people who survived pain by closing their hearts. True strength is learning the lesson without losing your humanity. If someone's betrayal taught them never to trust again, you can learn caution without copying bitterness. If someone's failure taught them never to dream again, you can learn preparation without copying fear. If someone's rejection taught them to become cruel, you can learn self-respect without copying hardness. This is how you learn wisely. You take the lesson, but you refuse to inherit the damage. The same is true with success. Do not copy the ego of successful people and call it confidence. Do not copy their obsession and call it discipline. Do not copy their emotional neglect and call it sacrifice. Do not copy their lack of peace and call it ambition. Success without self-awareness can become another kind of prison. Learn from what helped them rise, but also notice what their rise may have cost them. Ask not only, how did they win? Ask also, what did they lose while winning? And is that a price I am willing to pay? This question is essential because every path has a cost. The cost of copying is that you may pay for a life you did not truly choose. The cost of originality is that you may have to walk through uncertainty. The cost of following the crowd is losing self-respect. The cost of thinking for yourself is accepting responsibility. The cost of pleasing everyone is inner exhaustion. The cost of living honestly is occasional misunderstanding. Every path has a price. Wisdom is choosing the price that does not cost you your soul. As you learn from others, remember that your own experience is also a teacher. Many people trust books, mentors, experts, friends, and public opinion more than they trust the lessons their own life has already taught them. But your pain has taught you. Your mistakes have taught you. Your disappointments have taught you. Your moments of peace have taught you. Your seasons of confusion have taught you. Your quiet victories have taught you. Do not ignore the classroom of your own life while chasing wisdom from everyone else. Sometimes the lesson you need is already written in what you have survived. Your life has been giving you information for years. It has shown you which environments drain you. It has shown you which habits strengthen you. It has shown you which people bring peace and which people create confusion. It has shown you what kind of work makes you feel alive and what kind of work makes you feel like you are disappearing. It has shown you what happens when you ignore your intuition. It has shown you what happens when you choose approval over honesty. If you never learn from your own life, you will keep repeating patterns while searching for answers outside yourself. A person who learns from everyone also learns from himself. He studies his reactions, he studies his mistakes, he studies his desires, he studies his fears, he studies his energy, he studies his peace. He begins to understand that wisdom is not only found in the voices of others, but also in the honest observation of his own life. This kind of self-study is powerful because it turns experience into intelligence. Without reflection, experience only becomes memory. With reflection, experience becomes wisdom. The more you reflect, the less you need to copy. You begin to see what works for you. You begin to understand your own patterns. You begin to know when advice fits and when it does not. You begin to recognize when inspiration is healthy and when comparison is stealing your peace. You begin to feel the difference between a path that challenges you and a path that betrays you. This inner awareness becomes your compass. Your compass will not always make your life easy, but it will make your life honest. It will help you learn from the disciplined without becoming rigid. It will help you learn from the successful without becoming prideful. It will help you learn from the peaceful without becoming passive. It will help you learn from the bold without becoming reckless. It will help you learn from the wounded without becoming bitter. It will help you learn from everyone while remaining loyal to the person you are here to become. So walk through life with open eyes and an awake mind. Let every person teach you something, but do not let every person shape you. Let every story offer you wisdom, but do not make every story your direction. Let every success inspire you, but do not let another person's success become a weapon against your own timing. Let every failure warn you, but do not let another person's failure become the boundary of your courage. Learn widely, but choose carefully. Admire deeply, but remain yourself. Listen humbly, but think independently. Study the paths of others, but do not abandon the path forming beneath your own feet, because you were not born to become a copy of someone else's life. You were born to gather wisdom from the world, refine it through your own soul, and walk forward as a person whose mind is awake, whose choices are conscious, and whose life is finally his own. Chapter 7. The person who thinks for himself becomes impossible to control. The person who truly learns to think for himself becomes one of the most difficult people in the world to control, not because he is rude, not because he is rebellious, not because he refuses to listen, and not because he believes he is above correction, but because he no longer hands his mind to every voice that tries to influence him. He has learned the difference between guidance and manipulation. He has learned the difference between love and control. He has learned the difference between criticism that sharpens him and criticism that is only meant to weaken him. He has learned the difference between advice that brings clarity and pressure that creates fear. And once a person learns these differences, he stops moving like a puppet pulled by other people's emotions, expectations, judgments, and opinions. Most people are controlled long before they realize it. They are controlled by fear of being disliked. They are controlled by the need to be understood. They are controlled by praise because praise makes them repeat whatever people approve. They are controlled by criticism because criticism makes them stop whatever people question. They are controlled by guilt because guilt makes them say yes when their soul is begging them to say no. They are controlled by comparison because comparison makes them abandon their own timing. They are controlled by trends because trends make them chase what everyone else is chasing. They are controlled by old memories because old pain makes them afraid to choose freely. They are controlled by the crowd because the crowd makes them feel safe, even when it is leading them away from themselves. But the person who thinks for himself begins to notice every invisible string. He notices when someone is trying to use fear to direct him. He notices when someone is trying to use love as a weapon. He notices when someone praises him only because he is useful to them. He notices when someone becomes angry not because he did something wrong, but because he stopped being easy to influence. He notices when advice is not really advice, but an attempt to keep him small, predictable, dependent, and available. This awareness changes everything, because what you can see clearly can no longer control you blindly. A person who thinks for himself does not become heartless. In fact, he may become more compassionate, because he understands human weakness more deeply. He understands that many people try to control others because they are afraid. Some parents control because they fear their children will suffer. Some friends control because they fear being left behind. Some partners control because they confuse attachment with love. Some societies control because they feel threatened by anyone who thinks differently. Some insecure people control because another person's freedom reminds them of their own inner prison. When you understand this, you do not need to hate people. You simply stop surrendering your life to their fear. There is great power in being able to listen without becoming captured. A controlled person hears an opinion and immediately adjusts himself. A free thinker hears an opinion and examines it. A controlled person receives criticism and feels destroyed. A free thinker receives criticism and asks whether it contains truth. A controlled person receives praise and becomes addicted to repeating the behavior that earned it. A free thinker receives praise with gratitude but does not let applause become his master. A controlled person becomes nervous when people disagree. A free thinker understands that disagreement is not always danger. It may be information, it may be misunderstanding, or it may simply be noise. When you think for yourself, people may notice that your reactions are changing. The things that once shook you no longer shake you in the same way. The opinions that once pulled you in every direction begin to lose their power. You no longer rush to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer argue with every person who doubts your path. You no longer try to make everyone see your heart before you allow yourself to move forward. You no longer treat every disagreement as a crisis. This calmness may confuse people who are used to controlling you through emotional pressure. Some people will test your growth. They will test whether your boundary is real. They will test whether your silence is strength or only temporary anger. They will test whether your decision can be changed through guilt. They will test whether your confidence collapses under criticism. They will test whether you still need their approval more than you need your peace. And when they realize that you no longer respond the old way, they may become uncomfortable. They may say you have become cold. They may say you are acting different. They may say you think you are better now. But often, what they are really saying is that you are no longer emotionally available for their control. This is where you must remain wise. Do not let their discomfort make you harsh, and do not let their words make you weak. The goal is not to punish people for noticing your growth. The goal is to remain steady enough that you do not return to old patterns just because someone else does not like your new clarity. Many people begin changing, but they stop when the people around them resist. They take one step toward freedom, then return to the cage because the cage is familiar and the voices outside it are loud. But if you want your life to become truly yours, you must pass through the season where your growth disappoints the people who benefited from your confusion. A person who thinks for himself becomes impossible to control because his identity no longer depends on constant approval. He knows who he is learning to become. He knows what values he is trying to protect. He knows what kind of life he is trying to build. He knows which habits strengthen him and which habits weaken him. He knows which people bring wisdom and which people bring only noise. He knows that not every invitation deserves his time. Not every argument deserves his energy. Not every opinion deserves his attention. And not every emotional reaction deserves his surrender. This knowing gives him a quiet power that does not need to be announced. The world often tries to control people by keeping them confused. Confused people are easy to lead. If you do not know your values, others will sell you theirs. If you do not know your goals, others will place you inside theirs. If you do not know your worth, others will decide how little they can give you. If you do not know your boundaries, others will keep crossing them and calling it normal. If you do not know your direction, every loud person will seem like a guide. This is why clarity is one of the strongest forms of freedom. A clear person may still learn, adjust, and grow, but he is not easily dragged away from himself. Clarity does not mean you have every answer. It does not mean your future is perfectly planned. It does not mean you never feel doubt, fear, sadness, or uncertainty. Clarity means you know enough about yourself to stop being available for every form of pressure. You know that your peace matters. You know that your mind matters. You know that your time matters. You know that your decisions have consequences you must live with. You know that people may advise you, but they cannot live for you. You know that being liked by everyone is not worth losing yourself. You know that a life of blind following may feel safe, but it will never feel free. When this clarity enters your life, manipulation becomes easier to recognize. You begin to notice when someone uses urgency to stop you from thinking. They say, "Decide now, or you will lose everything," because they know that rushed people are easier to control. You begin to notice when someone uses shame to make you obey. They say, "A good person would do this," because they want you to confuse self-respect with selfishness. You begin to notice when someone uses fear to shrink your vision. They say, "People like you cannot do that," because they want their limitation to become your ceiling. You begin to notice when someone uses approval as bait. They become warm when you comply and cold when you think for yourself. The free thinker does not respond to these games with panic. He slows down, he breathes, he observes, he asks, "Why is this person pushing me to decide before I have time to think?" He asks, "Is this guilt based on truth, or is it being used to control me?" He asks, "Is this warning based on wisdom, or is it only fear dressed as concern?" He asks, "Am I choosing this because it aligns with my values, or because I am afraid of losing someone's approval?" These questions break the spell. Manipulation survives in confusion, but it weakens in the presence of honest questioning. The person who thinks for himself also becomes difficult to control because he is no longer addicted to emotional reactions. Many people are controlled through their emotions because they react before they reflect. Someone criticizes them and they immediately defend themselves. Someone praises them and they immediately trust them. Someone ignores them and they immediately chase. Someone threatens to leave and they immediately surrender their boundaries. Someone becomes angry and they immediately apologize even when they did nothing wrong. Their life becomes a series of emotional reflexes, and anyone who understands those reflexes can influence them. But the independent thinker creates space between feeling and action. He may feel the sting of criticism, but he does not let the sting choose his response. He may feel the sweetness of praise, but he does not let praise blind him. He may feel fear when someone disapproves, but he does not automatically abandon his decision. He may feel sadness when someone misunderstands him, but he does not spend his whole life trying to repair every false image. This space between emotion and action is where freedom lives. Without that space, you are controlled by whoever can trigger you. With that space, you become grounded enough to choose. This does not mean you become emotionless. Emotions are part of being human. They carry information, they show you what matters, they reveal wounds, desires, needs, fears, and values. But emotions are not always final truth. Fear may warn you of danger, or it may simply protect an old comfort zone. Guilt may point to something you need to correct, or it may be the result of someone conditioning you to feel wrong whenever you choose yourself. Anger may reveal injustice, or it may reveal wounded pride. Sadness may ask you to grieve, or it may ask you to release. A thinker does not ignore emotion. He interprets it carefully before obeying it. One of the most powerful changes in a person who thinks for himself is that he becomes less predictable to those who once controlled him. Not unstable, but no longer predictable in weakness. They can no longer assume that guilt will make him say yes. They can no longer assume that silence will make him chase. They can no longer assume that criticism will make him stop. They can no longer assume that praise will make him forget his standards. They can no longer assume that fear will make him shrink. This is why self-trust can feel threatening to people who depended on your self-doubt. There is a quiet strength in becoming someone who cannot be easily bought, easily scared, easily flattered, easily guilted, or easily confused. This strength does not need to be displayed loudly. It shows itself in the way you pause before answering, It shows itself in the way you keep your promise to yourself. It shows itself in the way you walk away from situations that require you to abandon your peace. It shows itself in the way you stop explaining your worth to people committed to undervaluing it. It shows itself in the way you listen to everyone, learn from what is useful, and still return to your own center before deciding. The person who thinks for himself also becomes impossible to control because he has learned to tolerate loneliness. This is important because many people remain controlled simply because they cannot bear the feeling of standing alone. They would rather agree with something false than sit with the discomfort of being different. They would rather follow a crowd going nowhere than walk alone toward something meaningful. They would rather betray their truth than risk temporary isolation. But every person who lives authentically must learn how to pass through seasons where the path feels quiet, misunderstood, and unsupported. Loneliness can be a test, but it can also be a training ground. In loneliness, you discover whether your beliefs are real or only borrowed. In loneliness, you discover whether your dream survives without applause. In loneliness, you discover whether your discipline depends on being watched. In loneliness, you discover whether your identity is strong enough to stand without constant validation. This is why some of the strongest people are formed in quiet seasons. They stop needing the crowd to confirm their direction. They learn how to hear themselves without interruption. They learn how to become their own witness before the world becomes theirs. When you no longer fear being alone, people lose one of the strongest tools of control. They can no longer threaten you with withdrawal and expect you to collapse. They can no longer make you choose between your truth and their presence. They can no longer keep you inside unhealthy situations by convincing you that life outside their approval is empty. You may still love people. You may still value connection. You may still desire companionship. But you no longer confuse attachment with survival. You understand that being alone with self-respect is better than being surrounded while abandoning yourself. This kind of freedom changes how you choose relationships. You no longer ask only, "Do they like me?" You ask, "Do I become more honest around them?" You no longer ask only, "Will they stay?" You ask, "Can I remain myself if they stay?" You no longer ask only, "Do they approve of my path?" You ask, "Do they respect my right to think, grow, and decide?" This is a higher standard, and it may reduce the number of people who remain close to you, but it will increase the peace you feel around those who do. A thinking person does not want people around him who demand obedience in exchange for connection. He wants people who can advise without controlling, disagree without humiliating, support without possessing, and love without requiring self-betrayal. He wants relationships where truth can breathe. He wants friendships where growth is not punished. He wants environments where ideas can be examined, not forced. He wants guidance that strengthens responsibility, not dependence. This is not arrogance. This is emotional maturity. The more you think for yourself, the more you realize that control often hides behind beautiful words. It may hide behind, "I only want what is best for you." It may hide behind, "I am saying this because I care." It may hide behind, "Everyone will laugh at you." It may hide behind, "You are making a mistake." It may hide behind, "After everything I have done for you." It may hide behind, "You have changed." Some of these words may be sincere, and some may contain truth, but the thinker does not fall asleep just because the words sound familiar. He listens to the intention, the pattern, the effect, and the result. He asks whether the words lead him toward wisdom or away from himself. One powerful sign of control is that it does not want you to become clearer. It wants you emotional, rushed, guilty, afraid, dependent, confused, and desperate for approval. True guidance can survive your questions. Control cannot. True love can respect your growth. Control resents it. True wisdom invites reflection. Control demands obedience. True support may warn you firmly, but it does not require you to surrender your entire mind. When you learn this distinction, you become much harder to mislead. The person who thinks for himself also develops a deep relationship with responsibility. This is what separates freedom from immaturity. Many people say they want to be free, but what they really want is to do whatever they feel without consequences. That is not freedom, that is impulse. Real freedom means you choose consciously and accept the result. It means you do not blame everyone else for your decisions. It means you do not use independence as an excuse for selfishness. It means you do not reject all advice and then complain when your avoidable mistakes hurt you. Thinking for yourself is powerful because it makes you the owner of your life. But ownership includes both authority and accountability. This responsibility makes you stronger because it forces you to become awake. You stop asking, "Who can I blame?" and start asking, "What can I learn?" You stop asking, "Why did they make me do this?" and start asking, "Why did I give their voice more power than my own judgment?" You stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What pattern am I repeating because I have not yet become conscious?" These questions are not always comfortable, but they are liberating. Blame may protect your ego for a moment, but responsibility gives you power for a lifetime. The more responsible you become, the less controllable you become, because control depends on your refusal to own your mind. If you are always waiting for someone else to decide, you can be led. If you are always searching for someone else to blame, you can be distracted. If you are always looking for someone else to rescue you from the consequences of your choices, you can be manipulated. But when you say, "This is my life, my mind, my decision, my growth, and my responsibility," something inside you becomes unshakable. This is not an easy transformation. It requires practice every day. It requires you to notice when you are about to agree just to avoid discomfort. It requires you to notice when you are about to follow someone's opinion because they sound confident. It requires you to notice when you are about to shrink your dream because someone else is afraid. It requires you to notice when you are about to betray your boundary because guilt feels heavy. It requires you to notice when you are about to choose applause over alignment. Freedom is not built only through big decisions. It is built through small moments where you stop abandoning yourself. Every time you pause before obeying pressure, you become stronger. Every time you ask an honest question instead of reacting automatically, you become stronger. Every time you choose a thoughtful no over a resentful yes, you become stronger. Every time you listen to advice without surrendering your mind, you become stronger. Every time you allow people to misunderstand you without rushing to perform for their approval, you become stronger. These small acts accumulate until one day you realize that the person who once controlled you no longer knows how to reach the new version of you. And this is when your life begins to change deeply. Not always loudly, not always visibly at first, but internally, everything begins to reorganize. Your peace no longer depends on constant agreement. Your confidence no longer depends on constant praise. Your direction no longer depends on the crowd. Your choices become more intentional. Your relationships become more honest. Your boundaries become more natural. Your mind becomes less crowded. Your energy returns because you are no longer spending your life managing the emotional reactions of everyone around you. There is a sacred kind of quietness that comes when you finally own your mind. You no longer need to announce your independence. You no longer need to prove that you are different. You no longer need to argue with every person who sees life differently. You no longer need to explain every step before taking it. You simply live with more alignment. You simply listen, think, choose, and move. This quietness is not weakness. It is the sound of inner authority. The world may still try to pull you. People may still advise, criticize, pressure, question, praise, doubt, and misunderstand. That will not disappear. Life will always contain voices. The goal is not to silence the world. The goal is to become so rooted within yourself that the world's noise can no longer uproot you. The goal is not to reject every opinion. The goal is to build a mind strong enough to examine opinions without being possessed by them. The goal is not to become unreachable. The goal is to become unmanipulable. A person who thinks for himself becomes impossible to control because he has learned to return home to himself. After every conversation he returns. After every criticism he returns. After every praise he returns. After every temptation he returns. After every doubt, he returns. He returns to his values. He returns to his principles. He returns to his long-term vision. He returns to his quiet inner knowing. He returns to the question, what is true, what is wise, what is responsible, and what is mine to choose? That return is power, not the power to dominate others, but the power to no longer be dominated by others. Not the power to ignore the world, but the power to hear the world without losing yourself inside it. Not the power to be perfect, but the power to remain conscious, honest, and responsible, even when life becomes loud. So let this be the final lesson of this book before the closing words. Listen to people, but do not become their property. Learn from people, but do not become their copy. Love people, but do not let love become a chain around your mind. Respect people, but do not confuse respect with surrender. Accept advice, but do not let advice erase your responsibility. Welcome correction, but do not let criticism destroy your self-trust. Appreciate praise, but do not let applause become your compass. The person who thinks for himself is not easy to control because he has stopped outsourcing his soul. He no longer asks the crowd who he is allowed to become. He no longer waits for permission to live honestly. He no longer lets fear write his future. He no longer lets guilt decide his boundaries. He no longer lets approval become the master of his choices. He has finally understood that his life is not a public project. His mind is not a public possession, and his path is not meant to be voted on by every voice around him. And when a person reaches that understanding, something powerful happens. He becomes calm. He becomes clear. He becomes grounded. He becomes free, not because the world has become quiet, but because the voice within him has finally become stronger than the noise around him. And now, as this book comes to an end, remember this truth with your whole heart. Your life was never meant to be written by every voice that spoke around you. People can advise you, warn you, guide you, criticize you, encourage you, misunderstand you, and even love you deeply, but none of them can live the consequences of your choices for you. When the room becomes quiet, when the applause fades, when the criticism disappears, when the opinions move on to another subject, you are the one who must live inside the life you accepted, the path you followed, and the person you allowed yourself to become. This is why you must listen with humility, but choose with responsibility. Listen to the wise, but do not worship them. Listen to the successful, but do not copy them blindly. Listen to the people who love you, but do not let their fear become your future. Listen to criticism, but do not let empty judgment become your identity. Listen to the crowd, but do not let the crowd become the author of your soul. There is wisdom in listening, but there is freedom in thinking clearly after you have listened. The world will always be loud. Someone will always have an opinion about your dream, your timing, your decisions, your silence, your boundaries, your growth, and your change. If you wait for every voice to agree before you move, you may never move at all. If you wait for everyone to understand you before you become yourself, you may spend your whole life performing a version of yourself that feels acceptable to others but painful to you. The permission you are waiting for may never arrive from the outside, because some doors in life only open when you finally give yourself permission to walk forward. So take your mind back from fear, take your confidence back from approval, take your direction back from the crowd, take your peace back from people who only understand control, take your future back from the opinions of those who are not responsible for your soul. You do not need to become disrespectful to become free. You do not need to become arrogant to think for yourself. You do not need to reject everyone in order to trust yourself. You only need to become honest enough to ask, is this truly my path? Or am I only walking here because I am afraid of disappointing others? If this book has taught you anything, let it teach you this. Listening is wisdom, but blind following is surrender. Learning is powerful, but copying is dangerous. Advice can guide you, but it must never replace your own responsibility. The crowd may be loud, but loudness is not truth. Approval may feel sweet, but it is not the same as peace. A person can be loved by many and still feel lost if they have abandoned themselves to remain accepted. Your life is not a public vote. Your dream is not a committee decision. Your peace is not something you must sacrifice so others can remain comfortable. Your mind is a gift, and it must be used, strengthened, protected, and trusted. You were not given a mind so that every loud person could think for you. You were not given a heart so that every fearful person could decide what it should love. You were not given a life so that you could become a copy of someone else's expectations. So from this moment forward, listen differently. When someone speaks, do not close your heart, but do not abandon your judgment. When someone advises you, receive what is useful, examine what is unclear, and release what is rooted in fear. When someone doubts you, ask whether their doubt contains wisdom or only limitation. When someone praises you, appreciate it without becoming addicted to it. When someone criticizes you, learn from what is true and let the rest fall away. When the crowd moves in one direction, pause long enough to ask whether that direction belongs to you. And when life becomes noisy, return to silence. Return to the quiet place inside you where your values still speak. Return to the part of you that knows when something is honest and when something is only impressive. Return to the part of you that remembers your dreams before fear edited them. Return to the part of you that was never created to live as a shadow of other people's opinions. The strongest life is not the one that everyone understands. It is the one that you can look back on with peace because you know you did not betray yourself to be accepted. The strongest person is not the one who ignores everyone. It is the one who can hear everyone, learn from everyone, respect everyone, and still walk forward with a mind that belongs to them. So listen to everyone, learn from everything, respect wisdom wherever you find it, but follow no one blindly, because the day you stop letting every voice become your master is the day you begin living as the author of your own life. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, the voice within you will no longer sound distant. It will sound clear, it will sound steady, it will sound free,